So, good afternoon guys. This is my play analysis 5 for the play Undoy, Ang Buhay sa Bubong ni Remy Velasco. So, we are tasked to identify the different parts of this play that includes the exposition, the rising action climax, the denouement, and lastly, the resolution. So, for my exposition, the Undoy, Ang Buhay sa Bubong started in an intense way. I mean, the play generally was written for me to be intense given the fact that the setting is over the roof of their house and it's in the middle of a typhoon. So, parang natural na maging intense yung feeling or yung aura na ibibigay ng play because of the situation of the characters. The exposition started with an argument. The first part of the play started with an argument between Mercy, the pregnant wife, and of course Obet, the husband, about their situation, how they were stuck in the roof or on the roof with nothing but canned goods and themselves, given the fact na malapit ng manganak si Mercy. It started when Mercy started to blame her husband about their situation, as well as how it depicts the situation, the usual situation or scenario of every Filipino families during typhoon, which is unprepared and of course stuck on their roofs. But it was shown by the husband character or Obed with his lines where he started to sit on the roof, and started to explain the scenario around them. The scenario around them, that the flood is all over the place. Some of the roofs or houses of their neighbors weren't visible already. So, ganun kalala during Undoy din ang situation. So, for me, that is the exposition. That is the range of the exposition in the play where they started blaming each other up to the part where Obed tried to sit on the roof and explain the situation. Next to exposition would be the rising action, of course. So, for me, the rising action of the play actually started in the part where Obed, the husband character, started to exclaim or to shout continuously for help to a random guy called Benok na siguro ay dumaan rin malapit sa kanila with his salbabida na sana ay pasakayin din ang kanyang asawa na si Mercy sa kanilang salbabida because Mercy is about to give birth. Pero that Benok guy started to explain na unahin para ang mga bata sa somewhere because may mga bata ring na-stuck doon. And that scene was followed by a series of arguments again. For me, going back as to what I have said on the exposition part, na the play started in an intense way. Like, it was written with full of arguments and mga blameful na mga statements from the characters. So, exposition pa lang, mafe-feel na talaga ng mga audience na intense siya because it consists of arguments. Malalaman mo lang na exposition siya and rising action siya and climax siya because the arguments intensify as the play goes on. So, for me, this is where the argument started to intensify more. Dahil doon din lumabas yung mga arguments nila, like how their first child or their other child was stuck to Aling Josie's house kasi pinabayaan daw ni Obet, and how they are stuck on the roof with only canned goods and other stuffs na hindi naman masyadong kailangan sa kanila ayon kay Mercy. To the rising action would be the climax. So, as we all know, climax is the turning point or the peak of the play. Ito yung pinakamataas na parte ng isang dula or ng isang kwento o isang teleserye, kumbaga. So, for me, the climax of the play started when Obet saw Mang Timong. Again, saw Mang Timong and called to let Mercy ride her batya. So this is the part where nag-intensify rin yung pagtawag ni Obet sa mga taong hinihingan niya ng tulong. At dito rin mas nag-intensify pa ang kanilang argument or ang kanilang pagbabangayan because Obet tried to ask for help from Mang Timong na napasakayin rin si Mercy sa kanyang batya. And that made Mercy very mad because imagine you are a pregnant woman and gusto kang pasakayin ng asawa mo sa isang batya habang bumabagyo. So, their argument intensified more in that part kasi parang ang tanga-tanga raw ni Obet, ang bobo niya raw. And it resulted or it was led to a scene na biglang sumakit ang tiyan ni Mercy na parang nagpapakita ng sintomas na parang manganganak na siya and Obet started to panic. He don't know what to do anymore kasi nasa bubong sila and his wife started to feel stomach pains na sinyalis ng panganganak. So, nataranta siya. And that part of the play was actually parang ikaw na audience, matataranta ka rin because you can imagine how hard their situation sa mga ganoong oras na bumabagyo, tapos may buntis kang asawa, tapos manganganak rin. So, parang ma-feel mo na that was the highest part of the play because yun nga, ang complicated ng situation nila. Next to the climax part is the part called denouement. So, from the climax, which is considered as the highest point or the peak ng isang kwento o ng isang dula, it will go down to a part called denouement. So, sa climax, dito na nagkandabuhol, diba sa climax, dito nagkakandabuhol-buhol ang mga pangyayari sa dula between the characters or their situation. So, the denouement's purpose is to antay the situation na nagkandabuhol-buhol during sa climax so that the audience will have the answer to what actually happened na paano nangyari yon and other stuffs to answer those questions. So for me, the denouement of the play is the part where Mercy actually said that the baby won't still come out and that Obet doesn't have to worry. So for me, actually, this is the funniest part of the play because during the climax, the scene is so intense. Kumbaga, the audience will thought na Mercy will really actually have to give birth on the roof. Na manganganak na talaga siya and that Obet is starting to panic at natataranta whether to call Mang Timong again or to help his wife labor. So, kumbaga, from those intense moments, parang biglang nag-cool down a bit or nag-calm down a bit ang energy ng play because Mercy said na suddenly, at a random moment na hindi pa naman pala lalabas ang anak niya and that Obet doesn't have to worry. We are down to the last part next to the denouement is called the resolution. So this resolution is actually a conclusion of a story or ng isang dula. This is the part where all unanswered questions will be answered to complete the story. So, for me, the resolution of this play, Undoy ang Buhay sa Bubong, is the part where they started arguing again, specifically about sa bubong. They started arguing na wala na silang bubong and Mercy's arguing na nasa bubong sila. So, for me, this is a very nice resolution sa isang play. Though, typically, hindi mo siya makukonsider na resolution talaga because the play ended na they are still stuck on that roof with nothing and no one to help them but themselves, of course. Kumbaga, hindi pinakita na nakaalis sila sa sitwasyon nila, but I like how it ended because they started again. Kumbaga, ipinakita ng writer or ng playwright na si Rami Velasco na the exposition started in an argument. And this will also end in an argument to, depict how Filipino families usually argues. Kumbaga, magsisimula sa away at tatapos rin sa away. Filipinos are not used to solving the problems or to answering the question why. We just love to argue and to end it with an argument as well. As the fact that the resolution low-key depicts the resiliency of every Filipino, na parang from the start they were arguing, and on the middle they were blaming each other, they were blaming the government, pero tatapos at magtatapos rin from arguing each other again, na parang wala lang, na like they're starting again all over. So for me, this reflects as well the resiliency culture of the Filipino, na kahit merong disaster na panang naganap, um, they still choose to start again. Like, it's a cycle na parang kahit ilang bagyo man ang dumaan, people or every Filipino will always choose to stand up and move forward. So for the historical and cultural contexts and perspective that I have found in the play, first is Filipino familial relationship. So familiar relationship of Filipinos is present in the play sa mga parte kung saan mostly sa arguments ni na Obet and Mercy, because it is usual for me, um, for Filipino couples or partners to argue about their flaws and mistakes, kumbaga, as well as a part na tumawag si Obet sa pamilya niya, specifically sa nanay niya at sa ninong niya, to ask for help, and that made Mercy even more angry. So, it depicts how usually ang mga babaeng asawa is not really comfortable, kumbaga, sa ina ng kanilang asawa. And as well as it shows how minsan may mga asawa na very dependent pa rin sa kanilang mga magulang, even though they have already their own family and their own partners. Next would be the competence of the government. So it has been known since then, Pilipinas talaga is palaging dinadaanan ng bagyo, and it's always been a struggle for the government to have a proper and competent disaster risk reduction management. Like always, palaging may bagyo, the government always struggles. I don't know if it's on the people, or it's on the citizen, or it's on the government's capability. Pero as I have noticed that kapag palaging tayong inaatake ng bagyo, the governments always have flaws in terms of preparing and combating the situation during disaster. This is the idea of typhoon is a fair game but life isn't. So, paano ko nasabi yung ganoong thought or ganoong quote? Because for me, typhoon is a fair game. What I mean about fair game is that we all experienced it. Kumbaga, pag inatake ng bagyo ang Pilipinas, mararamdaman natin yun eh, yung ihip ng hangin, yung malakas na patak ng ulan, we all experience it. But life is not. What I mean about it is that we all experience it, but we have different experiences about it. Pareho tayong nakakaranas ng bagyo, pero hindi pareho yung paghihirap natin. Next is, and probably the last, is the display of Filipino resiliency. So, we all know that Filipinos are always tagged to be resilient. Parang natural na sa atin na maging resilient, na maging flexible, to stand up again, or to start a new beginning after a disaster, after a chaos. So, I admire this trait sa mga Pilipino, na resilient tayo. But sometimes, or nowadays, we romanticize this kind of idea. We idealize this kind of idea. Parang minamahal na natin yung pagiging resilient natin ng sobra, that we do not seek, or we do not ask for accountability sa government natin. Yes, it is right that Filipino is resilient, na kaya nating bumangon and to smile despite the hardships and despite the challenges that we experience. But we also need to ask accountability sa government, or sa mga authority, or sa people responsible to give help to us, because it's needed. Hindi pwedeng kailangan lang nating bumangon ng bumangon and to start again. We also need to know what to do next, what to improve. That in the near future, we don't have to just start a new one and stand, but we start prepared and we stand stronger.